So why are we talking about ethics of AI? I don't know if you remember, but in 2021, in the Dutch government, and this is just one of the examples that I could bring today, the Dutch government had to resign because they were part of a big scandal about using an artificial intelligence solution to distribute childcare benefits. And this solution was found out that it was discriminating, meaning that it was refusing to give such benefits to those families that had origins from outside the Netherlands territory. And this was like a big and huge problem. And in fact, they resigned. After that, actually, in the Netherlands, and for example in Amsterdam, there were really a different approach to this problem. They started to take into consideration, but like a very good approach into how to use AI and other type of technologies in a responsible way, creating different tools to address what was the meaning of trustworthy AI, what can be also techniques and instruments and tools that could be put in place to enhance transparency and rebuild the relationship between the government and the citizens. Again, this is just one of the different examples that we saw in the last years as AI was more and more used and adopted in the world, of how this technology could pose different problems, different challenges, and how this impacts people and all over the world, but especially in Europe, in which we have such a human-centric approach to not just AI, but all different technologies. So, in fact, what happened after that is that the first big motion in the research and also in the business community was to start defining what was ethics of AI, what should be the principles that should be respected and follow when developing and using such technologies. And you see here, this is actually an old picture because it's from a couple of years ago, that represents the different principles that you see. Maybe I can use the pointer. Yeah, let's see. So here you see, for example, all the documents that were analyzed by the researchers that were proposing principles for AI ethics. And you see that there were like many different coming from the government side, other from the intergovernmental organizations, civil societies, association, and so on, and then the private sector. So you see that also the business community was already moving steps towards this kind of concepts. And here, of course, multi-stakeholder, which is a bit more diverse. You see here there are around 40 papers, but I can tell you this is a partial picture. Many of them were published afterwards or were not analyzed by these researchers. So you can see that the principle were the first type of directions that could be taken to define what is AI ethics and what should be the right way to use it and develop it. After that, in Europe, and I'm talking about Europe because we are in this continent, and the commission and the institutional organizations, as I was saying, were really moving very big steps towards implementing trustworthy AI. So they change a bit the concept, moving from an AI ethics point of view, which is at the basics, at the theoretical fundamentals of the vision for AI in Europe towards a broader concept of trustworthiness. And what does it mean? It means that you need to have artificial intelligence that is legal, in the sense that it respects all the legal requirements, the legal directions, obligations that are established in Europe. Why do we have this? Because AI, as you know, is mainly a component that enhances the other processes or the other products that are already available in the market. And these products and services and solutions are mainly regulated by sectorial regulations. So if you use AI in this type of solution, you need to be sure that they still remain legally acceptable. Then you have AI ethics, and I already mentioned here what it means to be ethical. It means that you need to respect the principles, the rights, and the cultural principles that you have in your own environment. This, in fact, is a very context-driven concept, and what you see here is what it is defined as the perspective of European institutions. And then you have a more technical meaning, that is robustness. This means that, and you will see it also in later on, that you need to have solutions that are trustworthy in the sense of the performances, and these performances could say, let's say, reliable over time. Based on these fundamental concepts, then you have other foundations for trustworthy AI, and these are what they call principles. So these come from a very, let's say, established perspective of what is the principles, the very big principles of human rights. So the respect for human authority, the prevention of harm, fairness, and explicability. Sorry. Then, based on this, they were saying, okay, how do we respect these principles? How do we enforce in practice these guidelines? And these were the 7 requirements that were defined. And if you want, these are the real principles that then after that were considered. And they defined technical methods and non-technical methods. And as you can see here, these are the real 7 key principles for trustworthy AI or ethical AI in Europe, as these are then the at the core and the basics for the legal requirements that are contained in the AI Act that is coming in these months. So you have human agency and oversight, which asks for keeping the human into the loop, human in charge of taking decisions and overseeing over the functioning of AI solution. This is very important because it means that the ultimate responsibility relies in a person that has the capabilities, that has the knowledge, that has the information to take decision in a independent way. Then again, you have the technical robustness and safety, which is what I was mentioning before, plus the part of safety that is safety towards the people and also safety, say this principle of do not harm is embedded here. Then you have privacy, and of course you know it, and data governance, which is also connected with what is the diversity, discrimination, and fairness. Because if you have a very good quality of data, if data is representativeness and so on, you try to mitigate the risk for not having the risk for discrimination. So this is still connected with this other principle. Of course, you also have other issues about having teams that entails different perspectives coming from different groups. And then you have the transparency principle, which is related to interpretability and understanding of the logics behind the AI solutions. As you know, they are very, very complex, could be very hard to be understood, but also you have all the other type of aspects related to providing information, being clear about the use of this technology and the limits of this technology. Of course, you have societal and environmental well-being. Again, this entails the fact that you need to strive for the good purpose of AI solutions, but also to be aware that this solution could have a environmental impact. And accountability, again, this is very important, not just related to the first principle, but also because this solution usually see the collaboration between different parties, different stakeholders, and you need to be aware of who is responsible for what, also for liability purposes. Then after that, and this was the work from the high-level expert group, it was 2029, then based on that, all the policy and also the AI Act was built. As you see here, they were also working on practical solutions on how to help organization in addressing this type of principles. So they provided the assessment list for trustworthy artificial intelligence for self-assessment. You see, you have the document itself. There is also a web tool. Unfortunately, yesterday I was trying to use it and it was not working. Maybe they are updating it, but let's hope they managed to fix the problems. But in principle, they were creating this web tool, but you can use also the document in which you can go through all the principles that you saw in the previous slide and try to see if these principles are relevant to your use case or your AI use case, and also providing you some glimpse on what could be the guidelines for respecting the principles. So they were providing you two types of questions. For example, the red one is about compliance with this requirement. And the other one is about the blue one, how are you respecting or following up the recommendation they provide. At the end, you get this radar chart that graphically shows you how you are compliant, if you want, with the principle in your AI use case. This is one of the examples of tools that are now available in the market and also online. I mean, market in the broader sense so that you can find it also for free, on how there are these tools to help guiding the development of AI solutions in a trustworthy way. So ensuring that you are at least thinking through what you should do to implement AI in a trustworthy way. Other examples are, as mentioned, codes of conduct. I mentioned before many documentations and codes of conduct that were published, but you can find sectorial ones, you can find at different level this type of code of conduct. It is important in the end to create one that is relevant or adopt one that is relevant for your own context. For example, you can create your own for your organization that embeds the principles of the organization themselves. So for example, you may have a code of conduct that is a general one and you tailor it or you mix it with the ones that you like, I don't know, from the high-level expert group or the OECD principles and so on. Then there is another type of tools that are very important and useful for implementing principles, and these are the assessments. You may have a very different and very many different type of assessments, starting from a maturity assessment at organizational level, and this are related, for example, to assessing the processes you have, for example, assessing the process for development and see how this already embeds all the different steps that you need to take into consideration when developing solutions. Or you may have assessment at let's say procurement level that assesses how your procurement process is in line with the guidelines. Then you have assessment at application level, and this, for example, the assessment list that I was showing before is of this type, and this again try to help you guide through the and remembering, trying to remind you, sorry, all the steps that you need to put in place when developing solutions. And of course, this can be either at process level, but could also be at a technical point of view. And I will show you some example in a minute. Then you have risk assessment. And again, usually these are at application level that helps you assessing which are the risks relevant to your own use case, assessing for each of the risk the possible impact and the likelihood of this risk to happen, providing you then an evaluation of the overall risk of the application, and then help you also to identify mitigation measures that you need to put in place to, of course, reduce the risk and monitor over time the risk assessment of the use case. You see here another type of assessment, which is the fundamental right one. This is a very important because in the last versions of the AI Act, for example, they added a specific requirement for high risk applications to perform a fundamental right impact assessment to evaluate how AI solutions are impacting the rights of people, and again guiding you through the mitigation of these risks. Finally, you see here another type of assessment that is related to the environmental impact. So, for example, you should be aware of how much energy the solution could consume, could require, and you could also implement KPIs to monitor this type of consumption. This is important because again, it's a new aspect that was integrated into the AI Act. But if you think about all the strategies towards global mitigating global warming, moving towards a green economy and so on, also the Green Deal that we have in Europe, this is going to be an important aspect of a solution that, as you know, may consume a lot of energy. Another category we have is about technical tools and technical examples of governance or ethics of AI that could be put in place. We have, as I was mentioning before, this is related with with this type of assessment. So technical tools that can help you assess the fairness of your solutions and try to mitigate, for example, the possible bias that could have been learned from the data that you were using for training. For example, having the performance assessed by groups or different type of metrics for fairness that could be compared, and also techniques that could be put in place to mitigate or reduce these biases. Then, for example, you have interpretability tools that can help you understand the inner functionings of your solutions. And here is a very broad and new research topic. So I expect that this type of tools will be more and more available on the market. Of course, you have providers like IBM, Microsoft, and many others that are already providing some of these tools embedded in their own platforms. But you also have new new providers that are creating platform ad hoc for this type of assessment or technical aspects. Then you have another type of tool that is a bit more broader, if you want, that is a governance, AI governance tool that helps you to govern the whole portfolio of AI solutions in line with best practices or compliance and so on, and tries to, for example, put everything together to see what are your AI solutions, how risky, let's say, imagine as a dashboard, like so all the AI solution you have, how riskier, how risk is monitored over the solutions, how they are performing against the compliance framework, and so on and so forth. So monitor of governance of solutions. Then here you have another type of let's say technical tools that are data sheets and model sheets. These are more related to governance type of solutions, for example, and they are meant for documenting which data sets you were using for your own model, how this data, what are the key characteristics of this data set, for example, when they were collected, how they were manipulated, who did it, how they are used, and so on. And then the same for model sheets, which are, let's say, identity cards for the models to again enhance transparency, enhance the also the information available for these models. Okay, so here was a glimpse of what is trustworthy AI and ethics of AI. Here is just a use case, an example, and it is for your thinking, but you can use your own application or the one that you are working with. And it's about Tesla, and you all know the how Tesla works. So the autonomous model that is behind this cars. But as you may have heard, in the last years, there are different examples of how these cars are having problems and causing accidents because, for example, the system was hacked or the system shut down and they were crashing towards trees or other type of or cars. Or here as an example, you see an example of when a person that was over relying on the autopilot mode then crashed, and there was an accident between the car and a truck because they were not paying attention because they were relying over the car itself. And then, okay, you had for example, that the driver was receiving warnings but was ignoring them and was saying, okay, the car is good enough. Okay, this is one other type of risk, if you want, related to autonomy and agency of human when working with this type of autonomous system. And I leave it to you, this or another example, to think through what were the requirements of the high-level expert group that were relevant for this use case, and how could this be, or the risks related to that, to those requirements, and how this risk could have been mitigated and the risk then avoided. Maybe I took too much, but
Thank you, Sara. Thank you so much for your amazing presentation. I do have a question, and I think we can leave 5 minutes for questions if you
yeah,
have. And
of course, yes.
I'll just go ahead and start with one because in the startup context, startups work in a very fast-paced environment most of the times. And even though having a lot of tools to implement ethical AI is extremely good, and there's a lot of options to even to self-assess, and then all these tools you presented, I imagine it can be a bit overwhelming for startups to navigate these tools and really understand their importance. So how can these tools and ethical AI in general be more, I would say, accessible, but also adaptable to the startup context?
Okay, so I see the point. I do not completely agree with it because as startups are, as you are saying, moving fast and very dynamic reality, they also have or should have usually a more user-centered approach, right? So if you put the user at the center and the person at the center of the development of the solution, then you need to be aware that you need to think about how this user could work with the AI in a good way. So providing the information they need to take actions over the solutions, or how they could be impacted in a bad way or in a good way. So for example, thinking about the biases and so on. So in the end, if you put the user at the center, you will need to think about this type of things. It's of course not simple. This is true. I see that in the market now there are really more and more solutions that are ready to use, or as there was for the development of solution themselves, some kind of no code solutions, so that you can build your own pipeline and guide you through this type of let's say checks and requirements. So, and I expect this will happen even more now that there is the push from the regulatory perspective. Of course, keep in mind that the regulation is also asking the national bodies to create national sandboxes for the compliance to the AI Act. And these sandboxes will be mostly directed to startups and SMEs. So there will be also specific actions to help the small medium enterprises access these sandboxes, and providing ready to use tools, documentation, guidance to ease the implementation of the principles. And as already now, and I have been working with them, there are digital innovation hubs at regional and local levels that should also be ready to support small and medium enterprises in compliance, or at least in addressing this kind of issues.
Okay, interesting. Thank you, Sara, for your answer. I think Ricardo is next. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sara, for your presentation. Really nice. One question that pops to my mind is the AI Act. What do you personally think about consensus in the way you present yourself this discussion? Because at the end, you are trying to give us some kind of guidance in the way that we need to have something to audit our own machine, you know, and that is something that startups we don't have teams in Portugal to do this kind of stuff, you know. So I imagine that for a startup that is trying to get ahead with an MVP, with a product that that can be useful for the society, using or not AI in the very beginning. So these questions are very important to think about them in the very beginning. But at the end, what you see in the world today, it's completely nonsense in the way that we are trying to implement AI in each country or in each region of the world. You know, it's yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so from my point of view, I've been following the European policy perspective on this for a while, and I actually like the approach because they tried to at least have modular, if you want, approach. So as for the other regulation, this is a risk-based approach. So, and the risk is structured based on the functional side of your solution. So it's not a technical based. So if you can use whatever technology you want, but you need to be aware of the use case, so the application perspective. And the stratification, so the risk steering that they propose, I think is not so bad, because in many of the applications should be not considered high risk. So I expect that startups mainly will go into the not high risk level. So in that case, you do not have any legal requirements. So you can do whatever you want. Of course, it's true that there is a moral suasion to try to still be trustworthy. So try to, for example, mitigate possible biases or enhance transparency and interpretability of solutions and so on. But if you don't have, if you are not an high risk application, you do not have this legal requirement. So you can, I shouldn't say it, but you can do whatever you want. Okay. So it is true, and I if I don't remember, if I'm not mistaken, I think that they were trying to mitigate a bit the requirements for small medium enterprises, because they were aware that also in Europe there is a majority of that, and they were also trying to push for innovation. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Another question that I have that pops up, it's like what you do have in the market today in regards to the machine learning. It's a lot of projects that are trying to figure out more stuff with the few data. So and this throws a rock to the what we don't know, and it throws a rock to the GDPR compliance, stuff like that. It's like in limbo, and it's right on the limits of what you can do with AI or what you can't do with AI. You know, it's like something that I would also want to have your opinion, because it's right. It's very difficult for me to understand what are the limits.
I didn't mention, and now you got me a suggestion to add something on my slide. But for example, there are solutions of synthetic data, and these type of providers are growing faster. So they are they would be, I think they will earn a very good role in this perspective, to provide data that could be used, that is based on real data, but goes into the direction of preventing data privacy infringements, or reducing the biases, enhancing the representativeness, for example, of different groups. So this could be a type of solution that will be available for everybody. Of course, there are also other policies that are now being under the implementation by the Commission, that is around that are around data spaces. Data sharing, for example, the Data Act and the Data Governance Act are pushing towards an environment, so in a general way, so in Europe, for data sharing, to create more push towards different also economic operators to share their data across the community in respect of privacy, ownership, data monetization, and so on and so forth. So the perspective is to create a space, well, more than one, where data is available and could be used by everybody.
Great. What an amazing discussion, Ricardo and Sara.
Thank you.
Let me just go to Yoriusz so he can pose his question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Sara. The more you talk, the more questions I have. Well, where to start? First of all, I think from what you say and from the many solutions that we now have in the market, and I understand the number is increasing, they are assessment solutions. They're not audit solutions. Is that correct?
They are not, sorry?
Audit solutions.
Okay.
Which would be a higher level of, let's say, maturity.
There are also, I was trying to simplify a bit. So there are also platforms that try to assess the different type of principles, if you want. But if you think about this kind of, let me go back. The principles, as I was showing you, are very different and very diverse. Some of them are more at process level, more at, let's say, how you do things, okay? And how you are putting in place safeguards or documenting. Some others are technical issues, and those can be tested somehow. So this big difference is already giving, how do you say this? It cannot be provided one solution for both, right? So you cannot have a technical solution that addresses also the process one. You may have, and this is, for example, what I called AI governance tool that tries to force the respect of some procedural practices, you know? So you may have that you define your policy and you say, okay, you are starting a project. Before you move to the next step, you need to do this, this, and that, and you need to provide evidence that you did this and that and that, and then you can move ahead. And then you can have, of course, also embedded some technical testing that could be then retrieved by the governance tool. But you see that there are process level and technical level testing or controls, if you want. This is the real term. So there are already. This AI governance tool is what I meant, but you also have a testing platform, but those are more related, and it was like the first box on top on the right, that are testing for fairness, testing for security, testing for robustness, and so on. So, and those, for example, could also implement monitoring over time. For example, if you define what are your testing procedure when you are developing before deployment, then you deploy, and then you have, let's say, these checks performed periodically over time, so that you can monitor over time how these performances are going ahead.
So is there a risk assessment step before or after, or somewhere in the process?
Over time, always. Risk assessment should always be done before and during and monitor over time, because you need to be aware that new risk could come up. This is also in project management, if you want, but for an AI solution is even more important, because the behavior could change, or the data that is ingested, like used for the running of the solution, could change over time, and then your solution is not fit for purpose anymore. So you need to have monitoring of the performances to be aware, and be sure that the solution is still working in the correct way.
And one more question is, we have GDPR. GDPR is quite concrete, I would say, as a framework, rather. I expect it's still going to evolve, and a lot AI is dependent on data, but GDPR is only part of the process. So at what level of maturity do you think the AI framework is in comparison with the GDPR framework?
I'm not an expert of GDPR, so I really don't know how could be compared.
Let me go on the question as you think about it, because my worry is that, as was said before, if you come from a country which is smaller with less resources, or that is not, does not have such a framework, which is not AI mature, let's say, then if you're a startup, you will be at a disadvantage unless you follow the framework of other countries that are more mature in order to have access to funding, to markets. And also because the first thing that I understand is that funders will look at due diligence, they will look at AI issues now. So unless you are not AI proof, that sense, you're a high risk investment for the funders. So I think that goes to what you discussed previously. So this policy from the Commission, which is flexible, I don't think it's advantageous for those who will be complacent.
Okay, yeah, I see the point. In principle, the sandbox could be also established between different countries. So, but it's true that what you say, I do not have an answer to that, unfortunately, but it's a very good point. I expect that the material would be available to everybody, but it's true that there is this risk.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Sara, do you have time for one last question? I'm taking advantage. Here, Natasha wants to pose a question.
Okay. Yeah, first of all, thank you, Sara. We know this is very hot topic, so it's really nice to have expert insights. What I wanted to ask was more related to issues of AI bias. So we know this is a very male-dominated world, the innovation world in general, I would say. So how you mentioned synthetic data, but even this data, how reliable is this data, how do you think companies and especially these smaller companies that aren't even really obligated to follow these rules, which is a bit concerning. How do you think, yeah, so how do you think that we could fight against these issues, like gender bias, racial bias, societal bias? Would it be by hiring more minorities? How do you think companies could, fight this?
I mean, actually, in the ethics of AI space, there are many women. Maybe not because they are not coming from the technical side. There are many organizations and associations that are trying to make known the people that are working in the space, also from the different groups, right? But I actually do not think this is the right way. I mean, you cannot expect that every organization has a very diverse group of people developing AI. It's going to be impossible. Also because there are not people, not too many people, and also the resources from the organization are not available. So I think that the most important thing should be to create awareness, knowledge about this topic, providing solution guidelines, data that could be used, because otherwise it's going to be impossible. It's not, and it's not always true that. I'm talking about a woman because I'm a woman, that a woman is less biased than a man, right? So, so you need to be aware of these problems, try to mitigate it with knowledge and expertise, and then implement checks. I mean, procedures that ensure that everybody did that. And then document, because if you document and then you find out that this problem was not addressed, then okay, you have responsibilities. So you can go to that person and say, look, why didn't you do that? You should do it. So I think that you can do it also without having this. I mean, of course, it's better. I'm not saying, but we need to be aware that it's going to be hard.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Natasha, and all for your amazing, interesting questions. And thank you, Sara, for being up to the task of answering them as well. Okay, I pushed the time a little bit. I know we're running a bit over schedule, but it was on purpose so we could, hear from Sara's expertise the most we can. So we will now divide into breakout rooms for the discussion circles. So here, each room will be facilitated. The facilitators will be Natasha, Luma, Yorius, and Livia, and I think myself as well, João. Sara, it's not mandatory for you to stay, but if you want, you can just circulate between the rooms, whatever you want to do.
I need to go. I'm sorry,
Yes.
but it was
That's
very,
okay,
very
that's
nice.
okay.
Thank you. And if you need anything, please reach out. I'm
Thank
always
you.
available.
Thank you for your time, Sara.